Hey, we just have this. President Trump, former President Trump, will be heading to the Texas border. I have accepted the invitation of Governor Greg Abbott to join him on an official visit to our nation's decimated southern border on Wednesday, June 30th. Looks like he's going to be Kamala Harris to the border. We just happen to have with us Governor Abbott right now, Greg Abbott of Texas. Sir, welcome back to Newsmax. Did you just get the news, or when did you find out he was accepting your invitation?
This is something that the president and I have talked about for a while now, and as he pointed out in his letter, it's something that I invited him to come down to the border to visit with the public about the border, because he set the high mark for what needs to be done on the border with building the border wall, with the Remain in Mexico policy, with the Title 42 policy, by sending a message that no longer could people come across the border illegally, that he was going to enforce the immigration laws. And, you know, it's amazing that we now have been through about 5 months or so of another administration. They have yet to come down to the border, either the president or the vice president, whereas President Trump was highly engaged, and he remained in active communication with me during the entirety of his presidency, in part because of his concern about border, but also because of his concern about the way that Texans and Americans were being impacted by this massive influx across the border. And one last thing, Greg, real quick, and that is, if you look at what President Trump was able to do in comparison to President Biden, it's astonishing, because last April, when President Trump was still in office, there were 17,000 people apprehended coming across the border. This April, under President Biden, there have been more than 170,000 people apprehended, so more than a 1,000% increase under the Biden administration. Obviously, President Trump was controlling the border far better than President Biden is.
Sir, you're going to step in, though. You're going to build the wall. You're going to step in and build a good chunk of this. But I want to show folks at home, there's a very long Texas-Mexico border, as you know, almost 1,300 miles. You don't need a wall for the entire length. Am I correct in that? There are lakes. There are certain areas where a wall would just make no difference.
Well, in addition to what you just said, also there are certain areas where either no one or really hardly anyone ever crosses the border. Conversely, Greg, there are other areas where there are an incredible influx of invaders coming across the border, and that's exactly why we need to build the border wall in certain strategic areas. And it's going to be tomorrow that I make the public announcement about exactly what the Texas plan is.
I've known about you, well, since you became governor, 6 years ago, but only recently, and I've been watching you for a long time, did I realize that you are confined to a wheelchair. A lot of folks don't know that, and I was surprised. I understand you had an accident in your 20s. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and has it,
Sure,
how it's affected you? I mean, beyond the obvious, you know, your life dramatically changed.
Sure. Well, it's one thing you can't see through a TV camera like this. But yeah, I was in my 20s, and I was out running. So I was an avid runner. And while I was out running one day, a massive oak tree crashed and fell down on my back and hit me in the back and crushed my vertebrae and my spinal cord, leaving me immediately and permanently paralyzed and needing to use a wheelchair ever since that time. But I got to tell you, I chose immediately not to be a victim, but to find a way to be a victor. I learned a very important lesson, and that is our lives are not going to be defined by our challenges. Instead, we define our lives by the way that we respond to those challenges. And it was after the accident that put me into the wheelchair that I went on to become a state district judge in Houston. I became a Supreme Court justice for the state of Texas. I became the longest serving attorney general in Texas history, and now governor of the great state. Part of that is because of the resolve that I had not to be a victim, but part of it shows the art of the possible in Texas, showing that I live in a state where even a young man whose life is broken in half can rise up and be governor of this great state.
I love it, sir. Thank you for sharing that story. And, well,